Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to start over on part 3 of World War II, and we are going to reiterate what we stated in D-Day. Kids? Yes. Which one? Saving Private Ryan. That's going to be our if you want to come at night movie. Yeah. Okay? So, we're going to talk about D-Day in Europe. We talked about that. We showed you the film from Saving Private Ryan, which was pretty graphic, no doubt about it. Now, the main part of that invasion of Normandy in northwestern France on June 6, 1944 was to liberate France, which we did by September 12, 1944. Now, in the middle of all this war, guess what we're going to have? You don't just stop these because there's a war. We're going to have a presidential election. Yes, my dear?
Okay, so I guess I don't really understand why they had to call up the Russians. Wasn't there any other spot?
That was the spot that General Eisenhower thought would be the most successful to liberate France. That's what he felt was... I don't think there was any easy spot, to be quite honest with you. But that's what he chose. So I don't have a real good answer for you there other than that's the place he chose to attack. Okay? Now, we're going to have a presidential election in 1944. And, you know, what's our next move? We've liberated France. We've hit the soft underbelly of Europe. Where are we going next? To Germany. So as we prepare for the final drive into Germany, it's not going to interfere with the regular presidential election that's going to happen in November of 1944. Well, the war is going well at this point. The Democratic Party wants Franklin Roosevelt to run for a 4th term. So really, it's not going to be up to them who they nominate necessarily, as it is, will Roosevelt run for a 4th term? Well, after he chooses or agrees to run for a 4th term, the Democratic Party nominates him for re-election, and they're going to switch his running mate, however. They're going to move to a new running mate. So Franklin Roosevelt's running mate for the vice presidency in the election of 1944 is going to be a senator from Missouri by the name of Harry S. Truman. So Roosevelt's running mate for this election of 1944 will be Senator Harry S. Truman of Missouri. The Republican Party, who I think quite frankly know that this is not going to be an easy task for them, they counter Roosevelt by nominating New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey, who will come back to play in history later. He's going to get crushed in this election, but he is going to come back to play an important part of another election later, an election in which Harry Truman is going to try to win the presidency. So the Republican Party is going to counter by nominating New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey. And because of the success of World War II, President Roosevelt wins a sweeping victory in this election. He defeats Dewey by an electoral count of 432 to 99. So a pretty big sweeping victory in this election of 1944. But the point being is that we are having a presidential election in the middle of a major world war. And Roosevelt defeats Dewey with an electoral vote count of 432 to 99. Now, with that said, now we're going to move to our next subtopic, which is the end of the German reign in Europe. Okay, the end of the German reign in Europe. Germany is going to be on the defensive here, the rest of the war, with the exception of one counterattack they will make in trying to defend their homeland. So we have the end of the German reign in Europe. And again, like I mentioned, after the liberation of France, the Allies agreed to use General Eisenhower's plan to take the country of Germany. That was the plan. But Eisenhower wanted to use a conservative approach. He didn't want to get in a rush. He was going to advance slowly against the German front to end up getting into the country. So he's going to use a conservative approach. He's going to advance slowly against the German front. So what he's going to do is he's going to be taking land toward Germany, and eventually they will plan for the full invasion of Germany when the time is right. And Eisenhower's plan's working pretty well until December of 1944. So Eisenhower's using a conservative approach. He's advancing slowly against the German front, and everything seems to be working pretty well until December of 1944. And that's when the Germans planned a counterattack against the Allied forces. In December of 1944, the Germans planned a counterattack against the Allies. And this counterattack is going to occur in Belgium. It's going to occur in Belgium, as the Allies are trying to continue to take ground to get into Germany for an invasion. This counterattack by the Germans in December of 1944 is going to take part in Belgium. And what happened is, during this counterattack, Germany found a weak point in the Allied lines around Germany, or excuse me, around Belgium. So during this counterattack, Germany found a weak point in the Allied lines around Belgium. And this weak point created what you might call a dangerous bulge. Okay, a dangerous bulge in the line. So during this counterattack in December of 1944, Germany finds a weak point in the Allied lines in Belgium. And this weak point, in cooperation with the counterattack that Germany was making against those lines, created what we called a dangerous bulge in the Allied lines in Belgium. Now, the Allies are forced to push the Germans back in Belgium, and they need to end this counterattack, and they need to make that bulge in their lines in Belgium strong again. So they fight in a battle, and they win a military victory in Belgium that goes down in history as the Battle of the Bulge. Okay, Battle of the Bulge. So during the counterattack, where Germany found a weak point in the Allied lines in Belgium, which created a dangerous bulge, the Allies then had to push the Germans back in Belgium, had to reinforce their lines there, and when they pushed the Germans back and ended that German counterattack, they won a military victory known as the Battle of the Bulge. Yes, my dear?
So after the movie that we watched, I went and researched my great-grandfather, who was in World War II, and his first battle that he fought was the Battle of the Bulge.
Really?
And I was like, have we gone over that?
Well, thank you, yeah. Yeah, we should, like I said, I'd like to go over it more in detail. It was a tough battle. It was not an easy win for us in Belgium, but really, that's interesting. Is he still alive? A lot, World War II veterans are not, I'm very proud of my father-in-law, who's 90, served in World War II. That's how old these people are now. There's not a lot of World War II veterans left, but that's a great story. That was his first combat, was the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium. Well, anyway, after the Allies won the Battle of the Bulge, German morale completely collapsed. They were just about done, okay? So you think about it, they get defeated in their counterattack in Belgium. They're continuing to get what? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, bombed. This continual bombing, along with this German defeat in Belgium, basically destroyed the Nazis' effort to continue fighting. We really had them on the run at this point, okay? So after the German defeat in Belgium, along with the continued 24-hour bombing of Germany by the Allies, the Nazis' efforts to continue fighting were done. So, as a result, what are the Allies ready to do in February of 1945? Invade Germany. Okay? So as a result of this victory at the Battle of the Bulge, as a result of this continued 24-hour bombing of Germany that is really taking toll on the Germans, citizens, and fighting men, finally in February of 1945, the Allies are ready to invade Germany. Now, picture the country of Germany, and I'm not going to probably draw this exactly right, but you got the country of Germany, and that's going to be, I'm not even going to claim that this is going to be starkly right, and I'm going to draw a country here. There you go. We're good, huh? Solid. Okay, now who's on the western part of Germany? But what the Allies, right?
U.S., Great Britain.
Okay, Allies, Great Britain, United States, etc. Who's over here pinching this way? Russia. Okay, very good. And the goal here, during this invasion, the goal is from the western sector of Germany. The Allied Air Force is going to continue to bomb German cities. Allied troops are going to continue to plunge deep into the heart of Germany from the west. And from the eastern section of Europe, the Soviet Union or Russians are going to pinch Germany from the east. And the idea is to do what? Meet somewhere in the middle. So the Allies are going to try to sweep the western part of Germany. The Russians are going to try to sweep the eastern part of Germany, and they're to meet in the center of Germany once they've swept the country clean. And they do that finally on April 25th of 1945. April 25th of 1945 is when the Allied army met with Russian forces in the middle of Germany. They actually met at the Elbe River in Germany. And on April 25th, 1945, when the Allied army met with the Russian army at the Elbe River in Germany, it ensured that the German countryside had been swept clean. That happened on April 25th, 1945. The Allied army met with the Russian army at the Elbe River in Germany that ensured that the German countryside had been swept clean. What happened 5 days later on April 30th? Anybody know what's that? What did you say? Don't be bashful, you might be right. What did you say? Well, not yet. You're going to get to that. What happened before that? 5 days later, on April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler and his girlfriend, Eva Braun, both committed suicide in Berlin. Don't date a crazy totalitarian ruler. She might have to commit suicide.
They call their kids too.
So 5 days later, on April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in Berlin. Yes. Oh. Now, with his death by suicide on April 30th, 1945, Hitler's 1,000-year Reich, or empire, Reich is another name for empire, had lasted a total of 12 years. So with his death on April 30th, 1945, shot himself in the head with a pistol, Hitler committed suicide, and his 1,000-year Reich, or empire, had actually lasted a total of 12 years. He claimed he could rule Germany for 1,000 years, or his influence could. And he referred to his empire as the 1,000-year Reich. It lasted a total of 12 years. So, in answering Hannah's question, it was on May 8th of 1945, May 8th, 1945, when the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. It was on May 8th, 1945, that the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. This day will be forever known in American history as VE Day, Victory in Europe. So, on May 8th, 1945, the German High Command surrendered unconditionally to the Allies, a day that will be always known in history as VE Day, or Victory in Europe.
I hope they never found Hitler's body.
I knew
You
the plot
escaped to
didn't
South
kill
America.
They did, but they didn't get to us.
Why don't we start a conspiracy theory right before we get to the Kennedy
Get
assassination?
back.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, how do they know that he shot himself?
How do you know they didn't find his body?
I've just heard that, like, I'm not saying that's fact, I'm just saying that's what it was.
It sounds like they don't have
Here's the deal. I'm not dealing dealing theories.
I'm not saying it's a
Yeah.
conspiracy theory, I'm just asking if they ever found his body, like, that's just what I've heard.
Yeah. Do some research and let me know that. Some good research. Okay?
Body, but they did this on it.
All right.
Make sure it was his body.
That will take us to our next subtopic, which is Nazi horrors, the Holocaust. Now again, the Holocaust is something you could talk about for a long, long, long period of time. So my goal in the Holocaust is to just basically tell you a little bit about it, who was involved in it, who are the victims of it, and why the United States did not step up and help with that one. Okay? All right. We have a tremendous joy in Europe after our victory, but it is clouded by the shocking news of Hitler's treatment of Jewish people in Europe. The world was starting to hear detailed blood-curdling crimes that the Nazis had committed against the Jews in Europe, and these horrifying crimes will be referred to from this point on as the Holocaust. Now you will have, excuse me, an opportunity to see the Holocaust Museum when we get to Washington, D.C. if you've not already seen it. I've seen it once, and I've been there 18 times. It's not something that is really very positive, you know what I mean? But it's a great thing. It's quite depressing, actually. But it's a great thing to see. And I think that you'll enjoy at least the part of history of knowing what happened to these people. Now, how did we ever find out about the Holocaust? What happened is Allied troops, when they advanced into Poland and Germany in the spring of 1945, they really came face to face with what was Hitler's final solution to the Jewish population of Germany. So again, when Allied troops advanced into Poland and Germany in the spring of 1945, they came face to face with Hitler's, what he considered his final solution to the Jewish population of Germany. Now the thing that I think is important you understand, and maybe you do and maybe you don't, is that German extermination camps, you probably know this, claimed the lives of like 6 million Jews. But it also claimed the lives of 6 million more what Hitler considered undesirables. Did you know that? Yeah, more than just Jewish people. Most people don't know. So along with 6 million German Jews who were put to death, there were 6 million more undesirables as well. And does anybody know what type of people were sent to these extermination camps other than Jews? Homosexuals definitely were. Gypsies. Homosexuals and gypsies he saw as undesirable.
Blacks.
Not so much blacks, but there were 2 countries that he thought were full of undesirables. You want to guess what they were? Poland. So Poles, as they're known, were also part of the extermination, and Slavs, people from Yugoslavia, the Slavic countries in Europe, Slavs, S-L-A-V-S, Poles, Slavs. In other words, other than the 6 million Jews who were put to death, there were 6 million more undesirables. What are you guys doing? Okay, well just give me a second here, guys.
S-L-A-V-S.
No
Sit-
E, no E.
That would be the word slaves.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you something, just to be honest with you, this is frustrating. It's frustrating when you guys do not come to class and you're ready to go. It's frustrating when you're talking when I'm talking. And you're way, way worse this year than you were last year by far. And you're no comparison to the junior class as far as this goes. And it's not all of you. But I think you know who you are, and I think we gotta get this taken care of. Because it's very, very frustrating. And it's frustrating for those that are also trying to get me to repeat this. My general rule is if you keep interrupting me, I'm not going to repeat it. If you do not interrupt me, I will repeat it many times. So let's just kind of keep that in mind. So the German extermination camps had claimed the lives of about 6 million Jews who were put to death along with 6 million more undesirables. These include citizens of Poland, or Poles, P-O-L-E-S, citizens of the Slavic countries in Europe, which were also known as Slavs, S-L-A-V-S, Gypsies, J-Y-P-S-I-E-S, and a lot of homosexuals. I don't think at that time they worried much about women that were gay. I mean, that just wasn't really pictured at the time. So these were generally men who were deemed as homosexuals. And Hitler just felt that the Germans were a master race, and anybody that was in the country or even in the area that did not meet up to that, it was just easier to exterminate them than anything else. So that's what happened. Now, there were extermination camps such as Auschwitz, which, I mean, you'll see some picture of this at the Holocaust Museum. Photographs showing bodies stacked like cordwood, just stacked like cordwood. Survivors so thin that they could barely survive, barely alive. Also, they did experiments on these people. If they wanted to see how taking part of your brain out would affect how you acted, these are the type of people they did these experiments on. One of the things that probably hit me the most the time I went was they had a big pile of children's shoes in the Holocaust Museum to exemplify the number of children that were put to death. And you'll see a model of these concentration camps, these gas chambers, where these people walked in thinking they were taking a shower and they were gassing. It's unreal. It's not a very, very proud moment in world history, and it's not a very positive one. But I think it's important you see it, and I think you really will enjoy it. Now, the question I always had is, why in the world, what inhibited American action on these crimes? If they found this out in 1945, right, did we have some time to maybe figure this out a little bit? Well, here's 3 reasons why American action was inhibited on these war crimes, why we didn't get involved. Anybody have any idea why we wouldn't get involved? What are these people if you try to get them out of their environment? What do they become? What's a name for them? Or it's like the refugees. Okay, they were considered refugees. And there were a lot of isolationist attitudes in the 1930s that discouraged policymakers from assuming responsibility for the fate of refugees. In other words, what I'm saying is there were isolationist attitudes of people in the United States that did not want us to take on the burden of other countries. And they discouraged the policymakers or congressmen from saying, hey, we're not going to take any responsibility for these refugees. They're not our problem. So that was one of the reasons why Americans were inhibited in taking any action on these war crimes known as the Holocaust, because we just didn't feel like we were responsible for the fate of refugees and taking them into our country. Now, we also had some prior immigration legislation in the United States. What does that mean? If you have some legislation, that's kind of a big ticket item right now if we're going to let people come in, for example, from Mexico. What's Trump saying? No,